First, I want to say, does Kentucky come out for their authors? Now, those who are watching on the video later or listening, they will not be able to see the fact that the main room where this reading is taking place, absolutely filled from wall to wall. Our lobby is filled all the way toward the back to our Arno reading room on the other side of the building. So I want to thank all of you all for coming out, for braving the parking situation that is downtown's legacy, and coming out, though, for some really great, fantastic readings. My name is Jennifer Maddox. I'm the Executive Director of the Carnegie Center, but I also have the pleasure of coordinating the Kentucky Great Writers Series. The Kentucky Great Writers Series featured authors who live or have lived in Kentucky and have more won works of high literary quality. And then tonight, we do something special. Because of 250 Lex, we are honoring those authors who are living in Lexington who have or are Kentucky Poets Laureate. It's a very special reading, and we're so glad you all could be here tonight. But first, I want to tell you just about a few other things that we're doing for 250 Lex. It is Literary Month in April, but at the Carnegie Center, it is Literary Month every single month of the year. So, but we have some special things coming up this month, including on Thursday, we'll have a Burn the Mic event featuring some emerging writers, Monet Proctor and Renee Rigdon. That starts Thursday at 7 p.m. And if you are somebody who likes to read at an open mic, this event's for you. Also, on April 24th, which is Kentucky Writers' Day, at 6:30, Carnegie Center Literary Liaison Tom Evelyn will be leading a Lexington Writers' Walk, and we will meet under the arch in Gratz Park. Then we go into May. If you are someone with a family of school-age children, then on May 7th, we'll host a family fun and learning night celebrating Lexington's 250th birthday. So it's going to be a birthday party to remember and lots of fun. Currently, we also have an exhibit of Larkspur Press broadsides by Kentucky authors, and you can see those up in our gallery through May 9th. You can find details about these events and more on our website at carnegiecenterlex.org. Now, in case you don't know what Kentucky Writers' Day is, it's an event that is hosted by the Kentucky Arts Council, and thank you to Chris Cathers from Kentucky Arts Council for being here tonight. It's a wonderful event. It takes place on April 24th because that is the birthday of Robert Penn Warren, and you'll want to go to the Capitol that day and plan to spend the day. At 10 o'clock at the Capitol Rotunda, there will be a special event for outgoing Poet Laureate Silas House, in addition to the incoming Poet Laureate, who has not been named publicly, I don't think. So you want to definitely be watching the news because this is next Thursday. So we'll do the induction for the new Poet Laureate and have some other special readings. And then at 2 o'clock, you can make your way from the Capitol in Frankfort to Paul Sawyer Library, where a lot of our readers tonight will also be reading at the library for a special event there. So it's going to be a wonderful way to celebrate our Kentucky writers. Now, I would like to thank our Kentucky Great Writers Series sponsors. It takes a lot of people to make this happen, and we are so thankful, of course, tonight for 250 Lex for our very special book donations and also for the extra readers we have tonight. Reitzel Cook Foundation has been a long-term sponsor of this event, as has Kentucky Arts Council, Lex Arts, and WUKY. And it also takes donors like you. This free event is made possible because of donations and grants. And in these current times, your support means more than it ever has. So if you are so inclined and you would like to make a donation in any size, we're going to have some baskets going through the audience tonight. And if you want to, you can make a donation there. You can also donate on our website at carnegiecenterlex.org. Or there's also a sign right outside of the main room where we're reading tonight that has a QR code. So we appreciate your support. Carnegie's budget, just so you know, 75% of our budget comes from community support every single year. And this year, we really need you. So thank you so much. I'd also like to thank our bookseller tonight, A Likely Story. They came here from Midway. And you've probably already seen them at some of the other events for 250 Lex. We have kept them busy, all of our writer folks. So please stop by after the event, buy a book by some of these authors tonight, and show your support. And then, let's see here. And I did, as I mentioned earlier, because of this 250 Legs grant, we have backlist titles of authors that are featured tonight, and we hope that you will pick one book from this table, but also buy a new book over here as well. And the authors will be around to sign books tonight. So if you're just joining us, because I see some folks still filtering in, I'm Jennifer Maddox. I'm the coordinator of the Kentucky Great Writers Series, and it is my honor to introduce tonight's guest MC. Richard Taylor is a sixth-generation Kentuckian who lives near Frankfort. He was Kentucky Poet Laureate from 1999 to 2001. Kentucky history and our beautiful landscapes are prominent in his 12 books of poetry, 2 novels, and 4 books of nonfiction. He will be signing his 2022 poetry collection, Snow Falling on Water, after tonight's reading. Richard recently retired from a career as a university writing professor after teaching for many years at Kentucky State University and most recently, Transylvania University. You may also recognize him from the classes he's taught here at the Carnegie Center. He's taught poetry, we've had him teach historical fiction and some others as well, including one earlier this year called Illustrating Your Journal. And if you have never seen Richard's illustrations, they are they're sketches and watercolors. They are absolutely gorgeous, and I know he has an exhibit coming up soon in Frankfort too, so you'll definitely want to check that out. But please welcome tonight's guest MC, Richard Taylor.
Thank you, Jennifer. We are in for a treat tonight, hearing from Kentucky's poets laureate who live in Lexington, Kentucky. We will be given a chance to meet them and even to purchase their books, as well as perhaps receive a free one, as well as to quiz them on the portions of what they read that we don't understand. John Dryden, England's first poet laureate, said of Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, "Here is God's plenty." That's what we can expect tonight, God's plenty. Our first reader tonight is Silas House, Kentucky's current poet laureate. He has a national reputation as a writer of novels, most of them with a connection to Appalachia, but more broadly to humanity and the mysteries and workings of the human heart. In a steady succession of novels, his voice always rings true, whether it is a plea for the voice of tolerance in Southernmost, or survival and hope in the dystopic world of Lark Ascending. By way of introduction, I want to share one of my favorite Silas quotes. "I've burned. That's what I wish for all of you. To burn with anger, desire, joy, sorrow, all of it." Let's welcome Silas House.
Thank you very much. I'm going to set my timer. Well, my first collection of poetry is coming out in September. It's called All These Ghosts, and I'm going to read a few poems from it. The first one is called Blues. 1. Where I'm from, we paint porch ceilings haint blue, a pale, soft color that keeps spiders from building their webs there, thinking a lovely sky looms where they need shelter. Legend has it the color scares off ghosts, too, but that never worked for us. We lived with the past breathing down our necks. 2. I've never seen a whippoorwill, but I heard them often as a child. Years now since I've heard their pining call. Often in the night I stand still near the quiet creek, waiting in the hopes they might testify, singing their melancholy blues. 3. The blue hour is the quiet time, not long before dawn. Witches glide down from the high rocks and peek into windows. The dead walk the country roads under starless skies. There are panthers in these mountains that sound like women screaming when lonely in the long-legged night. 4. My aunt kept 4 pieces of blue depression glass in front of the western window so they could catch the last light of day, easing across the floor and up the wall, painting her face cerulean, always closing her eyes before the luminescence reached them. 5. We used to listen to Joni Mitchell, wishing for a river, recalling Little Green, dreaming California, singing Shampoo You, but most of all, mourning for blue. We danced and sang along while we washed dishes or sat still, me, you. 6. Once, our desire so tremendous, we pulled the Vespa to the side of the road, slipped into leaf-light woods, and tore at our clothes, ate each other's lips like cherries, laid on the bare ground, and once spent, we saw the sky, alive, aching, stretched above us like an ocean. 7. The first thing I saw were her eyes, the color of anemones, the way I imagine waters of the Mediterranean. I have not seen that sea, nor do I need to now, because I can see the world in her little face. 8. One day then, I knew what the blues meant. The whole world shifted yet never righted. All things have a color, and grief is blue. The ache you feel when you realize it will not fade nor darken. Nothing lasts for me or for you, not even the blues. Here's a little look at my childhood. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's called Boy in the Bubble. 6 years old, 2 weeks spent in a croup tent. Plastic sheets, the constant wheeze of the machine meant to help me breathe. My mother refused to leave, unable to rest while she listened to the heave of my strangled chest. That whole first year of school, I was sickly, struggling to seize enough air, a puny boy, smothered and frail. They plunged needles into me, counted blood cells. The whole church squeezed into my bedroom. Prayers gasped and yelled, speaking in tongues, cries released at fever pitch, arms held high, my forehead anointed with oil. Preachers' spittle on my eyes. I inhaled their incantations. My faith sighed in my veins as light eased the darkness of my lungs. Here's one from my mother, Lunch Lady. And I should say that the last line is an homage to a poem by Robert Hayden called Those Winter Sundays that some of you probably know. Lunch Lady. Always in the blue hour my mother arose and dressed while the eastern sky cracked like a bloody egg. Chafed hands forever paled by bleach, an eternity of scrubbed dishes, ready to catch whatever my father threw our way in a fit of rage. I did not understand the moment of darkness before she flipped on the lunchroom lights. I never witnessed the burn of grease nor felt the prick of broom handle splinters. Many of the children never saw her offer them food. For others, she rendered the lone tenderness in their long days. I thanked her, but not enough, now or then. This is Dale Hollow Lake, 1989. On the green water, the floats bobbed red as candied apples. And I believed we would always be like this, my cousins, singing together as we drifted on the lake, our parents no longer watching from the bank. We were teenagers now, as wild and free as we would ever be, ribbons on a breeze. But this was before marriage or babies, before presidents made us choose between each other and dreams of what could be. All of life was a carnival then. Bright lights, twirling rides. We held on to each other as our legs kicked the lake and sang along with Tracy Chapman. I had a feeling that I belonged. And I'm going to close with a short statement and a short poem, and I'm saying this totally myself and in no way on behalf of the Carnegie Center, an institution I so admire and am so thankful for. But I just want to remind everybody that in March, the Kentucky Senate, on partisan lines, pushed through Senate Bill 89, which absolutely gutted protection from pollution on our water, the water we drink, where some of us get baptized, fish, swim, the water that our distilleries use and that we give our thoroughbreds. It was pushed through by people eager to impress a regime who wants to log and or mine hundreds of thousands of acres of sacred national forest lands. Many of us, many of you in this room, fought to protect the water, but many more good, well-intentioned people did not even pick up the phone to call their representatives. We are in a fight for our country, and we all have to do whatever we can to turn this tide. The desecration of our water is only one of the atrocities that they are already committing. Poetry does help. It helps in dark times, but poetry will not be enough. So I'm begging everyone to watch closely and act accordingly to protect each other and to protect this one precious world. So I'll close with this very short poem called Watch Closely. You can learn all you need to know about someone by watching how they treat small things. Thank you.
Though she's not wearing one tonight, Georgella Lyon is the wearer of many hats. Abundant author of children's books, rich poetry, social activism, and a vibrant voice of Appalachia. A former poet laureate, 2015 to 2016, she unflinchingly presents us with a view of the world that is insightful and acutely perceived, tempered with wit and irony that give her writing substance and a long shelf life. Her work answers Ezra Pound's description of poetry as news that stays news. Her most recent collection of poems is Back to the Light, published by the University Press of Kentucky. Georgella Lyon.
Oh my goodness, I see what you mean. Hey back there. Wow. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to the Carnegie Center for hosting us and all they have contributed to Lexington's 250th year celebration. Because I write for kids, I've spent a lot of time in schools, and sometimes I see children I cannot forget. And this was one of them. It's called Little Girl Who Knows Too Much. Who in the 3rd grade is savvy and wary? Whose face is her grown-up face? Who would welcome dullness but can't afford it? Whose innocence has been slammed into insolence? What happens at her house? Does she have a house? Does she have a father, a brother, a mother's lover who has forced on her this face? She's in the front row. I can't help but look at her. Even her clothes are uneasy. She questions my spiel about writing as a way to connect with your inside self, your story. And where would that get me, old woman? She seems to say. I've still got to do a lot of time as a child. I've still got to try to save my outside self, as you so stupidly call it. Go home till you have something to say that helps. So this book, Back to the Light, in some way is answering her and telling of some of my own experience and also of what helped in that time. I was really lucky to come to poetry early. My daddy read poetry out loud, and I just thought, well, that's it, you know. That's what I want. And but this poem is about the first time reading a poem myself and being overcome by it. So this is the first time. The first time I read Spring and Fall to a young child, I thought I was getting the flu. I'd taken a break from drawing turkeys with colored chalk on the hall side blackboard in 6th grade. Actually, Carolyn was drawing. I was coloring in. She was good at it. Poems were scattered through our English book. We didn't call it literature. And I came on one printed over a gray tone image, probably a little girl amid falling leaves, and fell under the spell of, Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove and leaving? By the time I got to the end, I was all over heat and chills. Back at the board, I told Carolyn, I might not be here tomorrow. I think I'm getting sick. The next day I was fine till I read that poem. It is the blight man was born for. It is Margaret you mourn for. Again, the music, the heat and chills. It's the poem. The poem does that. It's been a great blessing in my life as a person and as a writer to have been in Lexington with the Women Writers Conference, which began in 1978 and continued until very recently, and brought incredible writers to us. One of them was Grace Paley, and she is one of my heroes. And so this is a Paley poem. The title is something she said. Let us go forth with fear and courage and rage to save the world. It can't be done, I know, so don't start. But didn't Grace go to Vietnam to bring prisoners home? Didn't she get arrested at the Pentagon? Spend a month in women's detention for sitting down in front of a tank and holding up a flower? Didn't she march against Nixon? More than 40 years later, it's war without end. Amen. But Washington Park was saved from Robert Moses' plans to extend Fifth Avenue through it. And New York lost its bid to ban music from the park. Disgraced and broken, Nixon left the White House, and those POWs did come home. Like her socialist parents, imprisoned in Russia, then freed when the Tsar had a son. Grace knew that the world can't be saved, but history can be changed if enough truth is told by people who get in the way. So she stood on a New York City street corner wearing a sign that said money, arms, war, profit, Wall Street. She calls us now to move through our fear, muscle our courage, and give rage a voice. As part of the Lex 250 celebration, Nikki Finney was here last week, and I hope some of you all got to hear her at the Kentucky or at the Northside Library. She was exactly what I needed. I'm telling you, the power and the courage that she brought with her and spoke. And so it was it was Nikki who let me write this poem. And this is the last one I'll read. Mandate. Adam was white, you know, made out of pure white clay God scooped up and spat his white spit into. Yahweh over yonder laid down the foundations of the world for those made in his white image, and gave us dominion over every living thing, which means hornets and comets, buffalo and baobab, the Nile, the Amazon, any non-white humans, if you can call them that. Are you sure you can call them that? We will erase their stories. We will outlaw any mirror that makes us look bad. We will round them up, break their families, shave, shackle, and deport them. We will make the world safe for those God gave it to. We will make America white once and for all.
Gurney Norman is one of the elder statesmen of Kentucky letters and one of the major voices of Appalachia. A native of Hazard, Kentucky, he is one of the famous four who graduated from the University of Kentucky and studied at Stanford University. Wendell Berry, Ed McClanahan, and James Baker Hall were his associates and classmates. Known to many for his teaching in the creative writing program at the university, he is perhaps its longest-serving creative writing instructor. Known primarily as a novelist and short story writer, he served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2009 through 2010. He is the author of Kinfolks, Divine Rights Trips, which was published originally in the Whole Earth Catalog, and Ancient Creek, among his other productions. Gurney is a positive force in Kentucky letters. Because he could not be here with us tonight, I'm going to read a short piece from Kinfolks, my favorite of his collections of short stories. It's written in what is called the epistolary mode. It's a fancy word, epistle meaning letters. It's actually an exchange of letters, which, if the truth were told, the English novel began with the epistolary novel, an exchange of letters. This is called a correspondence, and it's not as perhaps it's a not a respite. We've been talking about serious things tonight. This is a little less serious. Dear Brother Luther, I know you will be surprised to hear from me. It's been so long. how I found out you was yet living, and where was Wilgus Collier from here, who came to rent my upstairs apartment, a nice young traveling man. He says he grew up within a mile of where your daughter lives in Knott County, that his aunt is her neighbor, and for you to tell her hello. I call it the Lord's miracle that he sent Wilgus Collier to my house, a messenger of the only good news I have had in many years. I pray to him that this will reach you and that you will answer, and we will be in touch with one another again. So it's been many years since we were all at home together, hasn't it, dear brother? I often think of those old days and wish I was back at home with my loved ones, instead of sitting in this lonesome place by myself. Did you know I lived in Phoenix? I lived here 11 years. My husband, Troy, bought this house with 2 apartments and one other with 3 apartments and moved us here in 1954 when he retired and for my asthma. Then the next year he died of heart trouble and Bright's disease, so I have a mighty load to carry by myself. Troy had a boy and girl by his first marriage, but they have forgot their old stepmother, and I never had children of my own, as you perhaps know. It is lonesome in Phoenix, and I breathe with difficulty, and my tenants are the only ones I see, and they are not always friendly, except Wilgus Collier, a nice young traveling man who the Lord sent to me and put me in touch with you again, and oh, I hope how soon we can be together again, dear brother, like we were so many years ago when we lived on Cowan Creek. Join me in thanks to God, and write soon. Your loving sister, Mrs. Drusilla Cornett Tolliver. Sweet sister, could not believe your letter at first. I thought it was another trick to torment me. I read it again, then had daughter Cleo read it to me to be sure it was true. A big surprise to think for years I have a sister living after all. Yes, many years have gone under the bridge since we were all at home together and so happy. Now everything is down to a final proposition, it appears like. I have the gout and cataracts. My wife, Naomi, died 2 years ago. My young'uns are scattered here and yon, except daughter Blanche, who died, and son Romulus, who lost his mind. I live first with one, then the other, but mostly daughter Cleo. The others don't want me much. Bad business to be amongst ungrateful children. Arizona. A mighty fine place, I hear. Your man done good by you to leave you all so well off. I seen Goldwater on television one night, speaking right from Phoenix. He strikes me as a scoundrel, but it showed pictures of fine Arizona country. The desert and the sunset on some mountains so peaceful and quiet, it sure looked like where I want to be. And I hope how soon we can be together, sweet sister, to keep each other company in these terrible times. Your brother, Luther Cornett, age 79. How old are you by now? Dear brother, I am 72. I have asthma and arthritis, bursitis, and awful high blood pressure. My fingers hurts now to write this letter, and I hope you will be able to read it. But you have a nice handwrite, brother. You always was a good scholar at the Little Eagle School. I remember walking to school with you boys, and the way it's set back against the hillside, the front end of it on stilts, high enough to play under, and the way the willows and the sycamore leaned out over Eagle Creek and wading the creek, and the big rock we played on that we had mint growing around it. I remember an Easter egg hunt at school and the fight you had with Enoch Singleton. I know I forgot a lot of old times, but I do remember that school very well and hope to see it when I get back to dear Kentucky, which should not be too long now. My houses are not fancy, but they are buying up property right and left here, and I have buyers galore to pick from. But I want to get a good price so we can afford ourselves a nice place together, somewhere there in Knott County. Do you ever hear of any places for sale in the Car Forks section? Who owns the old home place now? Maybe we could buy it back and live there again and be like we used to be so many years ago. I look forward to meeting your Cleo and all your grandchildren. You are so lucky to have grandchildren. I never did even have children, but I guess I told you that. Until I learned you were yet living, I cried myself to sleep every night with only Jesus for my comfort. But now he has sent me you, and soon we will be reunited in his love, sweet brother, in his holy name, Drusilla Tolliver. Sweet sister, so much racket going on here, I can't hardly think what to write. It is this way all the time in this house, no peace and quiet. Cleo won't control her young'uns. They all promised me my own room before I moved in, but then never give me one. It was all a lure and a trap. I turned the television up full blast to drown them out. After a while, you don't hear a loud television, but it is still a poor substitute for the true quiet like you all must have there out west. The 27 flood got Eagle School. A flood can come and get the rest of this place for all I care. Kentucky is all tore up and gone, sister. Soon they'll flood Car Fork and that whole section, including the old home place, the government doing it. You are fortunate to have your property. I used to have property on Hardburley Mountain, 200 acres with a good stand of white pine, plus a well-dwelling house, barn, and good-sized garden. But the strip miners got it all. I loved the sons of bitches, but couldn't do no good. So here I am stuck at Cleo's house, crowded up, no privacy, she can't cook, young'uns gone wild, not enough heat, and they read my mail before I get it. You be careful what you say. Count your blessings in Arizona, sister, none in Kentucky to count, and keep your property. I'll be out there before long to help you run it, and we'll get along good forevermore. Your loving brother, Luther. Dear brother, you would not like Arizona. It is not green and cool here like Kentucky, and Phoenix is difficult of living. I can't tell you too much about Phoenix, except that Carson Avenue is a terrible place. I've only seen the downtown part once in 1956, when the Presbyterians took me down and back one day for a good deed. But it wasn't much then, and I doubt that it's any better now. I want to pick blackberries again and gather chestnuts and see the laurel when it blooms. I never see anything on Carson Avenue except the motorcycle gang go by. Taxes are awful, and the heat, and when you call the water company, it takes it a month to come. And you can't see television because of this sarcastic neighbor, Mr. Ortiz, who pranks with the electricity. So I'll be home in a month or two, soon as I settle up my business. You look for us a place to buy. Get it in the country. Pick us out a cove off one of those cool hollows and have laurel on it if you can. It would be good to live close to Carr Creek or Troublesome, or maybe even over on North Fork River. I'm not much of a fisherman, but you always were, and I can cook fish. It would be handy if we could buy us a good house already built. But if you feel up to it and some of your children would help, I'd like to buy a hillside with good timber on it, and we could have us a house built out of our own wood to suit us, and cheaper too. Wouldn't that be something? I'd like to be on the road to see people go by, Kentucky neighbors and kinfolks. Last Sunday, I was sitting on my porch, and a motorcycle man yelled an ugly thing at me and upset me terrible. And I didn't exactly admire your using bad language in your last letter, brother. That indicates you may not be saved, but I pray you are. But if you aren't, tell me the truth about it. Sister Drusilla. Drusilla, don't come to Kentucky. I tell you, this is a terrible place. The union is pulled out. No work anywhere. They're gouging the hillsides down, stripping and augering. Ledford Pope's house got totally carried off by a mudslide. The streams are fouled. Not a fish this side of Buckhorn Lake. Not even any water to speak of, except at flood time when there's more than anybody wants. We know that pretty well. The young folks have mostly moved to Ohio and Indiana to work, and them that's left have no respect for old people. They'd never help us build a house, even if we had something to build it out of. Kentucky's timber has been gone since you have. Coal trucks make more racket than motorcycles, and there's no air fit to breathe for the slate dumps burning. Sure no place for asthma sufferers. I've seen the pictures of Arizona and read about it. It sounds like all the old folks in the country are retiring out there but me. Damn such business as that. I'm on my way. Soon as I can accumulate train fare. If you got some extra to send me for expenses, I'd be grateful to you and make it up once I got there. I'll rent 2 apartments from you myself. I want some room to stretch in. And don't worry about getting downtown. Me and you will take right off the first thing and see all the sights and visit all the retired people in Phoenix and go to shows and ride buses and sit around the swimming pools drinking iced tea. Sorry for the bad words. Yes, I'm saved. I was a terrible rip-roarer most of my life. But 12 years ago, I seen the light and give up all bad habits except cussing. I'm ready to give that up too, but see no way to go about it till I get somewhere where there ain't so much to cuss about. Your brother, Luther. Brother, I'm not going to live in Arizona. That's all there is to it. You don't understand how it is here. Why do you not want me to come home? Are you making up all those bad tales on Kentucky just to keep me from coming? I don't understand your attitude. A man that would cuss his sister would lie to her too. And the Bible admonishes against oaths and lies. I don't want to boss you, but I'll not be bossed myself, and I absolutely will not stay in Arizona. Drusilla Tolliver. Sister, you say you don't understand my attitude. Well, I don't understand a sister that would have 2 fancy houses and yet turn out a suffering brother at the hands of mean children in a bad location. You talk like such a Christian. I say, do unto others as you want them to do unto you, and you're the one with 2 houses. I didn't cuss you, and I just wonder who is lying to who. For I have seen the pictures of Arizona and read of everybody moving there to retire and be happy. It sounds like you're all out there together plotting to keep me out. Well, you won't get away with it. And I have one question to ask. Have you been getting secret letters from Cleo on the side? It wouldn't surprise me. Luther Cornett. Brother, I still refuse to stay in Arizona in spite of your insults, and I suggest you read the Beatitudes. Drusilla Cornett Tolliver. Sister, you and Cleo think you can live and trap me into staying in Kentucky, but you are wrong. Luther Cornett. Luther, you have turned out strange, is all I can say. Unmindful of the needs of others, and if you continue to curse me, we might as well forget the whole business. Drusilla Cornett Tolliver. Drusilla, I have not cussed you, but I'm about to get around to it. And Cleo and Emmett and Polly and Sarah and R.C. and little Charles too, if they don't hush that racket. If you don't agree to my coming there, then you are right. We might as well forget the whole thing, for I absolutely refuse to stay in such a goddamn hellhole as this. Luther Cornett. Dear Luther, Satan moves your tongue and I won't listen or agree to stay here another week. Drusilla Tolliver. Dear Drusilla, then we just as well forget the whole thing. Mr. Luther O. Cornett. Luther, suit yourself. Mrs. Drusilla Tolliver. That's it. Frank X. Walker was Kentucky's Poet Laureate from 2013 to 2015 and was recently inducted into Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. Hailing from Danville, he attended UOK and holds an MFA in creative writing from Spalding University and currently is a professor in the MFA creative writing program at the University of Kentucky. Primarily a poet, he coined the word Affrilachian and was a founding member of the Appalachian Poets, emphasizing the role of African Americans in Appalachia. Many of his published works explore Black history, including York, the enslaved person who accompanied the Lewis and Clark expedition as they crossed the country. His most recent collection, Load in 9 Times, is a doozy, drawing on the Black experience during the American Civil War. Let's welcome Frank Walker.
All right, I won't be sharing any of that doozy. Something to look at this crowd. This is, hey, way back there, Doria. Are you inside or outside the window? I'm going to read 4 poems. I'm going to read from a new collection of poems that are indirectly about golf, but they are more directly about 100 years of American history that started in 1897 and come forward to the year Tiger Woods turned pro. What most people think when they think about golf and Black athletes is that intersection started with Tiger Woods, but there's a whole 100-year history before Tiger even came on the scene. So I'm going to read some poems from that and then close with one a little closer to home. This first poem is from having a chance to see Tiger play for the first time. As a golf fan and a fan of young Tiger Woods, I was still stunned to get to the course in Louisville and see several thousand people following him everywhere he went for all 18 holes, and you could barely even see him. But at some point, because of, I think, the consumption of alcohol, it was more than a fan club. It was almost a mob. And so I'll just read the poem. It's called Gallery Mobs, Tiger Woods. Let's call it a sports lynching. This sea of raucous beer bellies and sunburnt faces, this titillating mob crowding the boundaries, pushing and pulling the rope, straining to rake their eyeballs across his body, prosecuting and judging his every move. Thousands will testify, I saw him with my own eyes. I followed him for hours. Let's call it a sports lynching. Imagine the postcard of him swinging, the remixing of the crowd's roar, pointing, rehearsing, the retelling. I watched him put it in the hole. We took a picture. He was still wearing that bloody shirt. Let's call it a sports lynching, an ever-tightening noose, a cult of celebrity worship, the cellular memory of his rise and fall, the glove he wore as a souvenir, the belief that if we could just see him swing, they could imagine the rest. Yeah, don't clap for that. Yeah, I often read things that make you uncomfortable, and it's hard to clap when you're feeling uncomfortable. So honor that feeling. These poems come from that same space. Let me read a poem about Ben Spiller. Ben Spiller was probably better than Tiger Woods, but never really got a chance to prove it. He ended up picketing golf courses where he wasn't allowed to play. So this is a poem called Ben Spiller Relit. And it's a haibun, which is a prose block followed by a haiku. And it's also a reversal poem. So it starts at the end of his life and tries to rewind it and imagine a new start, if you will. Has the epigraph from his son, William Spiller, who had the misfortune of watching his father descend into dementia. And in his demented state, he would say these mean, angry things about the game of golf and golf courses and his experiences that were inflicted on him, that still traumatized him, even in his kind of half mind. So I wanted to not remember him there. So here is Ben Spiller Relit. And William says, he should have been the hero, but they made him the scapegoat. Rescue him from obscurity. Relight his flame. Heal the heart that broke him. Remove the dementia. Wake him from peaceful sleeps without reasons to curse golf's gatekeepers or give in to anger, bitterness, and rage. Employ him in a meaningful job that doesn't require him to sacrifice his dignity. Allow him to train and compete without distractions. Don't deny him entry into tournaments. Open every closed door. Dismantle those slammed in his face. Take the protest sign off his neck. Walk him to his first tee box. Put a club in his hand. Witness him make a smooth swing and watch the ball's perfect flight set something ablaze inside. Try to imagine this legend, this sports icon, before golf broke his heart. And where most of these poems play in that space between the intersection of politics and race and sex, quite often, they're not all hit you in the gut. And to prove that, I'm going to read a love poem that's from this collection. It's called Drive. I'm going to dedicate this to Dorian Hairston and his wife. We are two copper spoons beneath the blanket. I'm listening to my wife's gentle breaths. She is finally relaxed after a long night of wrestling in her sleep. My hand is on her thigh, but I'm thinking about the perfect drive I hit on number 5 at Southwind and a 7-iron to the edge of the green. I replay the birdie putt trickling in to the hole over and over again. It could be on the Golf Channel, except there's no roaring crowd, no exuberant fan screaming, "Get in the hole!" No English accent whispering into a microphone about the significance of the shot, how my steady play today finally reflects my potential, my work ethic, my readiness for the moment. She shifts her weight. The air between our hips disappears. I close my eyes. I am no longer watching the flight of the ball. I am the ball in flight. I have been well struck. I am moving with intention towards the earth. This is not a game, and it's us doing all the whispering. I'm going to close with a poem in celebration of downtown. I live in the East End, in spite of what you heard in the news and what it says about crime stats and what happens when people visit the community for the first time and people give them maps and have areas circled where they should not look for housing. It includes my street and the blocks around it. This is a poem that you can see if you walk along the walking path down Midland, and it's on the corner of the Met Building, and it's called Ode to the East End. I see you, East End, with your historic homes and DeWeese Street pride, strutting from Brucetown to Brick City, from Guntown to Goodloe Town. Your stained glass churches and neighborhood schools all jockeying for position with your mean streets reputation and your sometimes racy past. Beneath the fresh-baked aroma of pastries and donuts, I smell your peanuts roasting, your tire marks from the burning rubber of king cobras nesting a gear change away from where Isaac Murphy once slept. I hear the trains hustling through, commuter traffic and sirens racing by, the occasional searching copter overhead. You are our Midland. You are the body, but not the waist. Between the feet of downtown and the big round head of New Circle Road. Always a park full of family reunions, forever a beacon for the children you birthed, a refuge for those this town would reject. You are downtown Lex, whole left ventricle. When the last shotgun house is gone, you will still be her heart. Thank you.
Krista Wilkinson holds an MFA in creative writing from Spalding University and is a member of the Appalachian Poets. She was Kentucky's Poet Laureate from 2021 through 2023, and she also was recently inducted into the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. She is both a poet, a prose writer, as well as a nonfiction writer. Her novel, her prize-winning novel, The Birds of Opulence, is outstanding. She's written at least 2 collections of short stories, maybe more. She most recently wrote a marvelous culinary memoir about food, Praise Song of the Kitchen Ghost. Her memoir, Heartsick, is forthcoming from Crown Publishers. Let's welcome Crystal, wherever you are, Crystal.
Thank you. Oh, wow, there are a lot of people there. More than there were when I came in. It's always good to be at the Carnegie Center. For many, many reasons, it feels like home is where a lot of us got our literary sea legs here. So it is home, and boy, is the house full tonight, which tells us something about the written word's capacity to heal. And this is something that I said the other night, but I don't know if a poem can save the world or the written word can save the world, but I think that poetry and the written language certainly makes us feel like it is a world worth saving. So it's a little embarrassing that there's so many people here, and I don't sing, but I'm going to sing to open this poem. And I'm just going to read 4 poems and read them pretty straight through. And especially, and there's a wonderful singer right in front of me, so I have to look this way when I do this. This is a poem called Baptism, Flatwoods, Kentucky, 1972. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Imagine a girl, not yet troubled, dressed in a crisp white dress, black patent leather shoes, and new white tights. Pressed hair smelling of royal crown, bangs curled under, glistening. He was the preacher, the Reverend William H. Mills, Jr., long, good hair, slicked back, pearl-handled cane, pocket watch chain dangling from a double-breasted suit. We stand in water up to our knees. The congregation reads scripture, eyes peeking up between hymnals and Sunday hats. The Bible is handed to the deacon. I baptize you in the name of the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost. See me submerged in cold creek water that seeps into my nostrils, tastes like danger in my mouth. I fight the hand of the preacher, come up gasping and crying, bless her heart, she's feeling the Spirit, Sister Usher says under a heavenly hat, and everybody claps and commences to sing of being washed in the blood of the Lamb. But I didn't feel devotion, felt wicked with my secrets, wasn't even sure what the Holy Ghost was. See me with my legs closed and my skirt tail down. See me cover my knees. See me bless my food. And comfort was found in best baptismal rewards. A bottle of orange knee-high, a sanctified fried chicken leg, corn pudding and German chocolate cake. Let the church say amen. My full belly, the most sacred part. That's a fat girl poem. So in this book, Perfect Black, which is my only collection of poetry, there's a suite of poems dedicated to my grandfather. And one of the things I pride myself on is never getting above my raisin. And so I like to write in my grandfather's voice. And he had a 3rd grade education and could not read, but was one of the wisest men I've ever met. So this is about him, and in his voice is called The Water Witch on Reading. Oh, I cipher pretty good, and can't no white man cheat me on my crops or on my change at the feed store. I'm known around these parts for being able to remove a wart with a bean. I'm the one they come to when they want their well witched, and now everybody asks me how many snows we gonna have come winter, or when they need to pull a baby from a mama's tit. Man from way off stopped here once for me to teach him how to make sorghum. Been learning all my life. I can read a map, can read a man's eyes and see if he's truthful. I can level a girder by sight. I can read the tremble in a cow's gut, a man's footprints in the mud. I can read a man's heart to see if he's right with the Lord, though it ain't my place to say. I can read time by my own shadow. I can read the corners of Christine's mouth and tell if she's mad at me. Only thing I can't read is words. And this is a political poem about sort of my first foray into politics, was Richard Nixon's resignation. So August 9th, 1974 is the name of this poem. This is not a political poem. I'm just remembering how I was eating cheese, eggs, and toast when Richard Nixon resigned, how cousins gathered around the TV, cross-legged on the floor, how I wasn't studying no president, how I was studying my cousin's friend Mark, tall Mark with the afro as big as the globe, back home on Miss Rigney's desk. This is not a political poem because I was 12 and wearing lip gloss and hot pants, flowers in my hair, so many miles from my grandmother's reach that summer. This is not a political poem, but today I'm thinking about how we got here. I'm thinking about the woman I've become. This is not a political poem, but today I'm thinking about guns and rape culture and men who can't think beyond the power of their pricks. This is not a political poem, but I'm thinking about the swagger in the walk of a 15-year-old boy in Ohio and wondering what kind of man he became. I wonder if he had any children. I wonder if they are alive. And then I'll close with a love poem for Ron. We, after 15 years, I don't know, we don't go to each other's readings anymore, so we read poems about each other when we don't go to each other's readings. So that's what's going on here. But so much of this book, the spine of this book, is about my grandparents and the way that I grew up. And one of my deepest regrets, because, I do love my husband, is that he never had a chance to meet my grandparents who would have loved him. My whole family, my cousins always say, is he kin to us somehow? He acts just like Granddaddy. So I married not my father, but my grandfather. Witness for Ron Davis. I'm convinced that if you could have seen my grandmother standing in the doorway waiting for him to come home from the fields, if you'd smelled that spectacular evening thick with sweat and felt the pulsing of the stars, if you'd borne witness to the animals' moans echoing in the holler that night, if you could have just seen the hair rise up on Granddaddy's arm like that, like offerings to God when his elbow touched hers, if you could have seen her longing dissipate just a little as he came through the door smelling like a day's work, you should have seen them, close enough to breathe the same air while not even touching. He smiled at her without smiling. If you could have seen them watching me watch them, then you'd know how much I love you. If you could have heard her say, "You want some supper? We got pie." Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Jeff Worley, Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2020, is originally from Kansas, but is one of the major voices in Kentucky letters. The author of at least 6 collections, proof that poetry can be at its most contagious when it introduces a little humor, which after all is a skewed look at our imperfect world and its fallible inhabitants. I had the privilege of witnessing his writing as it evolved in the writing group we were both a part of during the 90s. Free of a jaded view of things, he looks at the world through empathetic eyes, and much of his humor is directed at himself, as you will discover. I like his borrowing of William Stafford's emphasis on poetry as how we use language to generate meaning. Stafford called it Lucky Talk, which is the title of one of Jeff's most recent collections, and about which he may have more to say. As I understand Stafford and the core of his ideas, Jeff's poems rest insistently on the idea that ultimately every poem is about language. See what you think when you hear him. Jeff.
There must be 5,000 people here. You're looking good, all of you. Thanks for coming. I'm just going to read probably 4 poems, and there's a theme to these, and that is, along with the 250 Lex theme, all of these poems today are set in Lexington. Here's a fairly new one called Morning Shopping. And this is one where I live on Aurora Avenue, I'm happy to say. Any neighbors here? All right, all right. And as you know, especially, you know, pretty much anything can happen on Aurora Avenue or in our neighborhood. And so I was on my front porch, having my coffee, minding my own business, and this is kind of pretty much what happened. Morning shopping. A large woman with wild yellow hair pushes a squeaky grocery cart through our manicured neighborhood. It's Monday, trash day. She is shopping, I imagine, for something she can use or sell: slightly crippled lawn furniture, unhinged jewelry boxes. From my porch, the sun backlighting the basket, her treasures glitter gold. And just then, a beagle pup pops up from her cart. He takes a little look around, yawns. Has she found him in someone's clutter? No matter, because a man with an identical cart wheels her way. His chest and arms are bruised with tattoos. He snarls something, grabs the dog, and tosses it into the street. I go out in my coffee-stained bathrobe to try to set things straight. I hope I remember how to throw a solid punch. At the curb, I hear the smack of flesh. Closer, I see she's cold-cocked the man. So who am I out here to save? The dog is okay, sniffing something in the street. As the woman screams, "Get up, goddammit!" The man stirs, looking up at another man, me, whitely whiskered a few feet away. "Carla," he says, the puppy bouncing toward us. And this is how the morning presents itself. Richard mentioned William Stafford and his definition of poetry, which is basically lucky talk. And I wrote this poem based on that idea. He says specifically, I think poems are pieces of talk, savored and sustained. I would call them lucky talk. Yesterday at Kroger's, I heard a boy, maybe 6, say to his father, "We have 2 eyes and 2 arms and 2 legs. Why don't we have 2 penises?" I love language most when it slips up behind me like this, which is why, of course, poets sneak up their ears in cafes and bars. I've never done that with anybody, and I'm certainly not going to do it with you, I heard, unmoored from its context as I pretended to study the Pazzo's menu. And later that same lucky day, Jonathan's not a bad guy, really. He's just insufferable. My wife, always the dutiful daughter, brought her mother a bright Sunday bouquet. "These flowers are so beautiful," she said. "They look artificial." And my favorite from Louis Polonia on ESPN, after being traded by New York. "The Yankees are interested in only one thing, and I don't know what that is." You can see why that's my favorite of these. There's a little backstory. Some of you have heard me read this one before, I know that, but nobody has heard the backstory about when I heard this kid with his dad, we were all in the produce section. And one thing that I have told my students for forever, and how many of my former students are here and will admit it? Okay, nobody. One way or the other. But among other things, I say always have a pen that works and a 6x4 card in your pocket. So of course I heard heard this kid's question, and they wandered off, and so I looked for my card and didn't have one. So I thought, I've got to write this down. I want to get it exactly the way he said it. So I got my big pen out and looked around, and there was a banana. And so I started writing this on the banana. It turns out, that's a great place to write stuff, and it was my banana after all. And so I, got down his quote and went up to pay, and the cashier said, "Sir, somebody in produce wrote all over your banana. You could go get another one if you want to." And I said, "No, that's okay. I did that." And she looked at me for quite a long time, and I just said simply, "Notes." And then I left. I thought, just leave her with that, Anyhow, lucky talk. And here's one from Lucky Talk, another one, the chapbook, which I think there are a couple over there. Okay. And these are free unless you want to give me some money, and I'm totally fine with that. And so here we are back at Kroger, and this is a poem titled Turning 70. The bagger at Kroger, wearing a fracture boot, asks if she can help me out with my 2 plastic bags. At the Chinese restaurant, in my cracked open fortune cookie, a blank slip of paper. I used to know the capital of South Dakota. 24 tiny red spots have suddenly appeared on my chest and stomach. Well, my doctor says helpfully, your records tell me you just had a major birthday. Connect the dots. Thank you. I want to say that I've always loved reading. There couldn't be a better place to read poems than right here. And this is a magnificent group of people. You're obviously paying attention. Nobody's thrown any fruit at me yet. And, I really appreciate that. Now, can I find this poem? Yeah. And a couple of people have asked me to read this, and this goes along with my theme of poems I've written set in Lexington. And this one was set in the house where my wife and I lived some years back, Shawnee Place. Anybody? Oh? Oh, that's right. You were glad to see us go. I remember that. Yeah. And where did this go? I am so together. Okay. This is a poem titled Playing Possum. Something was gnawing at my dream, and awake now, I hear one of our cats loudly crunching at his bowl in the kitchen. But here in bed I make out the shapes of all 3 cats, a triumvirate around my wife and me. I leap up through the question of, something wrong, honey? And stumble toward the mad chewing. I flick on the light. There in the corner, pink as a piglet, a baby possum startles from the bowl of kitten caboodle, crumbs flaking around its tiny gash of mouth. And here's Linda, fully awake now too, with not only a broom for her, but one for me. She flings me mine like Ricky Nelson tossing John Wayne his loop-handled rifle in Rio Bravo. And we're shutting doors behind us and opening doors to the outside world, which clearly terrifies this arboreal rodent, whose little more than whiplash tail and provisional hiss. He scampers under the German trunk. I take a couple swipes underneath and tease out a dust-covered catnip toy, a disposable Bic, and half of what looks to be a slice of Donato's pepperoni. The possum folds into itself like a fist. But Linda is choking up and waving her broom, ready, so I thwack the thing broadside. It skids out like a top-ended puck to my wife, who swings, her breasts lovely in the sudden light. Did I mention we're both bone naked? And I'm skating toward the wide open front door, this 2 a.m. game of possum broomball, almost fun now, and whoosh the critter so hard it cartwheels like a cartoon possum through a racket of katydids and other night fiddlers, and lands like a wad of flubber on the lawn. As it scampers off, Linda and I stand on the front porch, victorious, holding our brooms in the manner of American Gothic. Our next door neighbor, Jamie, home from the late shift, turns her blue Toyota into the drive, fixing us with headlights. These whirlies, she may be saying to herself, naked house cleaning at 3 a.m.? At which point, there's nothing left for us to do. Wave. I love reading that poem. Thank you all for coming, and Jen, another good show you put on. And I think we're going to go over there and sign some books.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Can we give all of these amazing writers another round of applause? Outstanding. Now, since we're recording tonight and Gurney Norman couldn't be here, he will be watching this video, hopefully. So, would you all please show how much you love him with another round of applause? Absolutely. He is definitely here in this room in many ways. So our next thing that we're going to be doing here, I'm going to invite our Kentucky Poets Laureate to make their way to the book signing table. We're going to do a question and answer session. So if you have a question, I'll be running around with the mic while Richard's up here moderating things, but we'll let all of our authors come up here to the tables first. So thank you so much. I'll kick us off with a question then. So all of you all, Kentucky Poets Laureate, how has serving in that role impacted you in your writing career?
Why don't we begin with the person who asked the question, Salas?
Well, it's allowed me to see a lot more of Kentucky and meet so many people. And I already knew this, but it just, I think it solidified for me what a literary place Kentucky is. I mean, I think there's a lot of cities of similar size like this that would have a reading like this, and you're not going to have this kind of turnout, you know. So it's a place that supports its riders, and I certainly appreciate that. For me, it is also and it might have been the administration that Crystal and I worked under, but it sort of it gave me more faith in government, because the people who I have worked with in those roles have been, they've just been so hardworking, and they really are doing the best job they can, and I admire them for that. And I mean, all of you may have had that similar experience, but I think Governor Beshear and the First Lady care so deeply about the arts, and especially literature, and they're both, you know, great readers. So that's nice to have, you know. I don't know what we're going to do when we when his time is up, but we'll survive.
Well, I was so thrilled. Well, first I said when they called me, there must be some mistake. But then I was so thrilled to have the opportunity to be the Poet Laureate. And when they asked me for a project, I suggested something I was sure they would say no to, which was that we have workshops all over the state and invite people to write where I'm from poems, and then we put them on the website with a map, and then you click on the county and the poems will come up. And I thought this would get the same response I got from my parents when I suggested that we take out the stairs and put in a rope ladder and a fire pole, which would just be so much more fun the way we usually did it. But no, they were completely supportive, you know, and they did this fabulous job, and so we had poems from 83 counties and 731 poems. When I clicked on my home county, Harlan County, and the poems came up, I just burst into tears. It's just, you know, it's such a celebration of our voices at that time together, and so, it was a joy to travel the state and work with so many people and see what they wrote, and how their voices, how they were thrilled when they found their voice. You know, that's just transforming.
Yeah, somebody get that young woman some water, please. I would just echo those same things. I think for me, it's kind of a two-pronged answer. I think I experienced a level of pride because I didn't know I was the first African-American poet laureate. I hadn't even thought about it. But at the same time, as soon as I thought about it, the thing that really kind of made me pause is that when people would ask me, you know, wasn't I proud? And I would ask them, how many other black male poets do you know? And usually it was just silence. And so that kind of motivated me as a teacher and instructor, and kind of prompted me to make sure that, you know, I was more than an example, that I was active as a teacher. And if I could find any one young writer who looked like a young Frank out there anywhere, to give him everything I had to make sure that I wouldn't be the last. You know, Dorian Hairston. But the other thing was, I think it's the only reason I've probably been in 50 plus libraries in the state. You know, here in Lexington, we're spoiled. You know, we may not even go to different libraries in Lexington. We have our favorite, and we just go there every time we go. That's most people. But imagine visiting libraries across the state. I started getting emails that said, Well, every other poet laureate before you has visited our library. Can you come next Tuesday? How do you say no after that introduction? And then you drive, and it's a book club, and it's 4 people, but they want you to read, they want to talk to you, and it was the most fulfilling thing, and it gave me a kind of pride about the state that I didn't have before that. So I would say that I think less about a career, more about my relationship with the state and its literary reputation, and how, wherever we rank in literacy still today has no relationship with how much love we have as a people for books and reading. And this evening, this third event in 10 days, for the city is an example of that. And so I'm very proud to be part of that.
I guess for me, the first part was very personal because when I said I grew up here in the Carnegie Center and in and around Lexington as a writer through the Appalachian Poets and Laverne Zabilski's The Working Class Kitchen and all the little nooks and crannies here that Letha and Georgella and everybody is gathered to have these poetry moments. So when I got the phone call for me, I remember all the literary events that I went to, the Kentucky Women Writers Conference. I remember going to those early Kentucky book fairs and standing way back and looking at James Steele like he was, I don't know, Rock Hudson or whoever. Like I was just being just like, oh my gosh. And Frank would say, go up and talk to him. And I'll go, no, it's James Steele, I can't. So to be, and to have always only wanted to be a writer, here we go. It's all I ever wanted to be. And so part of me, like being really busy during COVID, and I have to say something wonderful about the Kentucky, we have the best arts council in the nation. I've visited so many of them. We have the best. And so they called and they said, or I got an email and said, we want to talk to you about a project. And I'm like, oh, Lord, I was trying to teach 120 students on Zoom during COVID. Ron had a lung disease. I was just worried. We were in our little bubble, worried about COVID. And I was like, and they want to do a project in the middle of this? Like, Lord have mercy, I don't want to talk to them. And they were like, just jump on a Zoom. And I jumped on the Zoom, and they told me, we want to let you know that you've been named the Kentucky Poet Laureate. And of course, I burst into tears. I was sobbing so loud, I could not even breathe because of what it meant to me personally. Being a native Kentuckian, being first generation to go to college, being, my grandparents being illiterate, like it just went on and on and on personally. I'm kind of jealous that y'all got to go so many places, and I was kind of stuck behind my screen. I did a lot of things with Zoom during my time of Poet Laureate, but I did get to go to a lot of places and got to meet a lot of people, and I was particularly interested in the two spectrums. I think there's so many people, some for the first time, elders who are starting to write, so I wanted to work with the two ends of the spectrum. I wanted to work with young people, and I wanted to work with our senior citizens in some ways, and I got to do that through a podcast. And it was just wonderful to meet all of those writers and everybody in between. I think the highlight of my time was my last podcast. I had King Elamine, who I think at the time was in 3rd grade, and Wendellberry on the same podcast. And so that was just really special.
I didn't want to be a writer all my life. I wanted to play first base for the Dodgers. But by the time I was 14, it became clear I couldn't hit a curveball, couldn't hit a fastball. And so I thought, okay, well, if I can't play first base for the Dodgers, I'll just become Poet Laureate of Kentucky. So it's kind of, a roundabout way to get here. I loved the job because I got to go all over Kentucky and listen to people's stories. And like all of us here, I love a good story. And I would often write these down and see what I could steal, because that's what poets do, you know. Well, what did Eliot say? Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. So, anyway, wonderful job for 2019, but then COVID hit March 4th, 2020, and I spent most of my time that year calling people and canceling, which was no fun, but necessary. One thing that came out of the experience was I would, if I traveled somewhere to give a reading or give a talk about poetry, I always had a little anthology of poems, enough copies to give to people. And people seemed to like that. So I got the idea that, you know, people really like free poems. And when I was no longer poet laureate, I got to talking with one of my neighbors, Tom Eblin. Everybody here probably knows him and vice versa, but he had heard that in New Hampshire somewhere, somebody devised a poetry box, put it up on the fence, and had 8 or 10 copies of a poem, and once they were gone, 8 or 10 copies of another one. And that has been actually quite wonderful. My favorite story about that is I'm half a block away from Ashland Elementary School, and moms usually and their kids are walking to and from school all the time. And one day, I'm on the front porch, and one day the little kid comes by with his mom, and he came by. I'm up on the porch, and you know, he just kind of walked by and he said, "Are you the poetry man?" And I said, "On my good days, on my good days." And he said, "Well, what if I wrote a poem and put it in your box?" "Please do," was my answer to that. So he did, and it was in block letters and all of this. And usually when, say, a neighbor will leave me a poem that they like, I will retype it or just copy it to make enough copies. I didn't with his, because it's what it should be. And it was so delightful to be able to just copy that, put copies in the poetry box, and who knows, you know, maybe that was a really big deal for him. You know?
Who else has a question?
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for giving me an education, the Carnegie Center as well. This is where I started to learn about writing. And I want to thank you for giving me the permission to be myself in my poetry. And Jeff, because you're not from Kentucky, neither am I was wondering, recently I've started to feel like I'm from Kentucky. I've been here since 1984, and I was wondering when it's okay to be a Kentuckian. Because I've really never been from anywhere and never felt a home, but I feel a home here. And I was wondering when I can.
Right now, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm curious, you can answer this however you like. Did you choose Kentucky, or did Kentucky choose you? Or another way to think about it, could you personify your relationship with Kentucky for us?
I can't personify it, but I can assign a word to it. For me, it's complicated. And I think that's why I like to write about it. If it was simple, it would be a lot less interesting. So I know that I love Kentucky to my bones, and that's the best way I know how to articulate it. I don't always feel like Kentucky loves me back properly by the way it votes. And so that is a complication, and that, for me, I need trouble to write, you know? And so that keeps me writing about it, I think. And the people and the stories and all that.
I guess I think of myself, first of all, as from the mountains, and then from Kentucky. That's a very hard question, really. Three of my grandparents were from, from the mountains, and my grandparents were all lived close to me. They were as large as the mountains for me, and so the strong sense of place, I think, that the mountains give and Kentucky gives is really important to me in my being, and the voices. I'm always listening for those voices.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I would just say that the closest I can come to answering that is thinking about how much stronger my relationship with Kentucky has become after discovering that my third great-grandfather on my mother's side and my father's side of the family both fought in the Civil War for the Union Army, and were both stationed at Camp Nelson, the first really free space for black people in Kentucky. And knowing that the family's freedom was tied to their sacrifice, just makes me feel different driving past the place now in a way that when I was a kid, it was just a tourist attraction. But that knowledge has deepened my respect for the land, and there's something extra knowing that my people fought to not just be here, but to be here in a certain kind of way, if that makes sense. That's as close as I can get to the answer.
Yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question either. I mean, I think one of Frank's poems describes Kentucky as beautiful, ugly. But it's the ugly parts. It's like having a family member that you know is a family member who's dysfunctional, and you can talk about it amongst family, but like when other people talk about it, you take great offense. So I'm always fighting, especially working for the university and being a professor, I'm always fighting over Kentucky in some ways. Fighting against Kentucky in other ways, in some of the politics, even within my own family. I think for me, my sort of nostalgia and romanticism about Kentucky is tied to the land, and tied to flora and fauna and waterways and rivers that know me and creeks that know me and that sort of thing, trees that know me, and I know them, and then the people. And when I say the people, not only those of us that are present here, but people who've walked this land and worked this land for generations and generations in my family and in other people's families.
Part of that question is really easy for me because I was at Penn State, the Altoona division of Penn State. My wife, Linda, went on the market. She'd just gotten her PhD. First place that she interviewed was UK. And she taught a class, went out to dinner with people, and she called me later that night and she said, you know, these people are so friendly. And they took me around to this beautiful, all these rock fences and Shakertown and all of this that wasn't an accident on their part. And she said, you know, they might hire me here on a tenure track. And she said, how would you feel about just quitting at Penn State and leaving Altoona and coming to Lexington? And I said, darling, I can have my bags packed in 3 minutes.
One more question. One more question.
One more. Anybody have a question? Burning question.
In honor of celebrating Kentucky's literary legacy as well as Lexington's, I'm just curious to know from each of you what one Kentucky author has had the largest influence on your work.
Can't nobody answer that. I mean, there's too many. I would say Gurney first of all for me, and then Gail Jones. But I'm going to stop myself there because it's two, but so many more.
I'm still in half that answer and just saying, because you said once, I'm going to say Gurney Norman.
Yep, I'll make that 3. Gurney and then James Steele.
Yeah, for me, it was a lot about being given permission to write. And so the people that did that for me were Georgella, James Steele, and Barbara Kingsolver, because when I was a teenager, you know, I knew about them. And so they negated this notion that you had to be in New York City to be a writer, you know. So, and Georgella was the first person to give me a blurb. So, and that's so important on your first book. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you all for your wonderful answers. I know some of you all had questions. You'll get a chance to talk to our authors, but I encourage you all to stop in, get a free book, buy one from A Likely Story, and then also come back to the Carnegie Center on Wednesday, May the 21st, when we resume our Kentucky Great Writers series with readings by Dorian Hairston, who's been here in the audience tonight, Alex Harrow, and Willie Carver. So we hope to see you then.